Welcome back to the show. This is What's Working Now. Today, I have an incredible entrepreneur, Craig Cook. He started a digital company, digital agency 26 plus years ago, before that was even a thing. So he's been a pioneer, a CEO for 26 plus years, and he has an amazing story that I'm excited to discover. It sounds like, Craig, that you kind of worked yourself to a point where life said, hey, you need to find center. And it led you on a journey to really coming to understand energy, Kung Fu. He's got a book, Business Kung Fu. We're going to dive into all of this and so much more. It's a story of struggle, adaptation, repositioning your brand. Craig Cook, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Katie. And it's a pleasure to be here, excited, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Craig, you alluded to the fact that you started out as a young, driven, ambitious entrepreneur, as so many of us do. And maybe you kind of said, I'm going to put my head down and I'm just going to grind this out, which at least that's kind of how I started. Tell us the story of an experience that radically formed and shaped how you now view the world today.
Absolutely. So you're correct, 100% that when I started my company, I was 25 and I was grinding like big time. Like the first 5 years were brutal. Just, 90-hour weeks and no vacations and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And over the course of time, like 10 years later, after I started my company, my health was totally reversed. Where when I started my company, I was in tip top shape, from training in Chinese Kung Fu and martial arts, and then also with strength training. And 10 years after starting my company, I was so in it 100% and obsessed, and that's all I did. My health um, was on the other end of the spectrum. And I started noticing it really when I turned around 40, just a lack of energy and cloudy brain, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward to about 46, I was
Mm.
diagnosed with diabetes, actually. And
Yikes.
I finally went to the doctor after like 10 years, typical dude. Yeah, I'm not going to see the doctor. And finally, I did. And that was a big kick in the butt. And I decided, well, I really need to turn things around. And actually, about 3, 4 years prior to that, I was starting to work on my health. And there's another big moment as well that we can talk about that comes about more like mental, emotional, like centeredness. But on this particular aspect of diabetes, I said, I got to really change my health around 100%. So yeah, I worked on it a lifestyle change, and I did not want to take any pharmaceutical medication. So I just did
Okay.
what it needed to happen in order to reverse it. And I've reversed it 100% naturally.
Get out. What's so incredible
100%.
is, we all have our own biology, physiology. And so what works for somebody is maybe a little bit different. And so I would guess that you had to kind of try and test some different things to kind of stay off of this pharmaceutical medicine. What did you ultimately discover was what would help you
Yeah.
become healthier?
Well, it's really with this condition, it's a big war, and it's a battle that needs to be fought on multiple fronts, like land, air, and sea. It's not just one thing. So sleep is important. That's one thing I never would get, right? So sleep,
Yeah. Yeah.
proper nutrition, and you need supplementation because the quality of our food these days is just isn't there, right? For because of industrial farming, et cetera, et cetera. So supplementation is important. Activity. So walking every day. I work to try to get at least 10,000 steps a day in. And then also strength training. Strength training is really important because the more lean muscle mass that you have, it helps burn up the blood sugar in your system. Also, I have picked back up my study of martial arts.
Mm.
So, I'm usually doing that 1 to 3 times a week, strength training twice a week, steps every day. And then also my what's called Qi Gong practice, which was another big aspect that we can talk about that I came into right around when I was 44. So it's all those things together combined,
Okay.
working together to
Okay.
win the battle.
And when you were kind of exploring and trying to get yourself to a healthy state, were you doing this with a doctor? Were you kind of like telling the doctor to hold on a minute and you were kind of exploring and testing things on your own?
So, what I did was, when I went to the doctor, first time I've been to the doctor in like 10 years, as I mentioned, and it was a naturopath doctor. And the reason why I went to
Okay.
see her is because this gentleman, he worked at it's like a wellness center. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come in and check it out? You should at least get a blood panel and see where your health's at." And I was like, that's interesting. I've never really done that. Sure. Okay. Why not? So I went in, got the blood panel, and then found out not only the diabetes diagnosis, but there's a bunch of other markers that were bad, like inflammation and all these other things. Right. And which
Mhm.
the vast majority of that's gone too. Um, and so they set me up on a program because they have a gym there with trainers, and then they have nutritionists on staff, chiropractors, the naturopath doctors. So they all work together. It's called Stark is the name of the place, and they do
Okay.
great. They're in Southern California, and they have 3 locations, but they do a great job at working as a team to really optimize your health. And,
Wow.
I've been with them for about 7 years, and they're the ones that helped me make sure I got on this path to win this battle.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like, you had to attack it on multiple fronts, your sleep, supplements,
Mhm.
walking, strength training. I love all of that. You've
Yes.
also mentioned this uh, art that you've
Ye
been studying, Qi Gong.
yes.
And I would love to hear more. When my kids were young, we lived in Taiwan for a little bit, and I would see
Oh,
these old people in the parks,
yeah.
moving the energy, and
That's
it,
right.
it it's such a fascinating thing to observe. And so I would love to hear kind of what you've experienced as you have studied that.
Sure, and, yeah, that's great, and you pronounce it correctly too, because a lot of people when they first hear about it, they're like, it's all kinds of funny pronunciations,
Mhm.
but yes, Qigong, I, actually had my first experience with Qigong, uh, when I was young, when I studied Chinese Kung Fu, because it originates from China, and now
Okay.
there's 3 branches of Qigong. There's martial Qigong, there's medical Qigong, and spiritual Qigong.
Mm.
And then there's all these nuances in that. So I had martial qigong experience when I was younger, and there's aspects of health and wellness with that. Which, by the way, my doctor had said because I had been doing qigong, my numbers would have been worse if I hadn't been actually
Wow.
when I
Okay.
had that first initial blood panel, et cetera.
Okay.
Anyways, in 2014, I came across a gentleman that did medical qigong. His name's Russ Anderson, great guy. And at that point in my life, had so much stress and pressure from running a company, and we were like growing fast. We were on the Inc. 5000 list 5 years in a row. I think this was
Wow.
probably like year 3 or 4 that we were
Okay.
on that list. So we're right in the middle of this great growth spurt. So
Hmm.
all the pressures of managing your team, meeting client demands, dealing with vendors, juggling family life. It
Yeah.
was um, a lot that can just kind of knock you off balance and off center. And that's just the way I
Hmm.
felt. Well, I went to see him for about 6 months, once a month. And after that period of time, I found myself feeling much more centered and balanced. And then he asked me, "Hey, would you like to learn how to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Because I always had a fascination with it from my earlier exposure.
Okay.
And so I started training in January of 2015 and been studying it for 9 years. And I'm actually enrolled in a doctorate program for Chinese energy medicine right now. And the way to think about it is Qigong literally means energy skill. Qi is energy, and
Hmm.
then Gong is skill. So just like how you mentioned all the people that you saw in Taiwan, probably out in the park,
Yeah.
doing these like Tai Chi looking movements
Hmm.
because it's similar. And Tai Chi is very similar, just has the martial applications, the focus on martial for the most part. But yeah, through various movements, integrating the mind, body, and breath. And there's also static meditations and all kinds of different meditations with different purposes. And you learn to cultivate energy within you and outside of you because we have an energetic anatomy. Just like we have a physical anatomy, we have an energetic anatomy. And it's working to develop that capacity, your energetic radiance in a sense, and
Hmm.
working with that. And eventually, depending upon what you want to do, it's just be all self care. But you can also work with others, just like the person I went to see, and that I do that. I have a number of clients that come see me for energy work. That I've done probably over 800 sessions in the past 9 years or so, and
Greg,
it's a great thing.
you're saying some things I'm super curious about. I mean, cultivating energy within you. I would expect there's many variables to that. So I want to hear more about that. And then I'm really
Okay,
curious about this energetic radiance. Tell me more
sure,
about
sure,
both.
sure, sure. So when you are working, and there's different systems out there. Like yoga is a good system too. And
Mhm.
cultures from around the world have worked with energy, and they just have their different methods of organizing, systematizing, classifying, labeling, etc. What I like about Qi Gong, the Chinese system, is it's been around for thousands of years, and they've done all this experimentation and documentation, and have developed protocols to have certain outcomes
Okay.
for to specific purposes, right? So when you're working with energy through these simple exercises, you're integrating the mind, body, breath, like I said, and some of these exercises utilize sound and visualization as well. So there's all these different things that you're doing. For example, one of the early exercises did for the first year and a half, called six syllable healing, is just consists of simple movements, but it integrates sound and visualization as well. And what it does, it three things: purge, quantify, and regulate. So the purging is getting rid of all this negative energy that's within. Because in order for you to build that capacity for that radiance that I mentioned, you got to get rid of the junk that's inside of you, and we all have it.
Okay. Yeah.
As we go through life, and we have these interactions with people, places, things, situations that's either positive or
Hmm.
negative. Well, when we have these negative experiences, we tend to stuff that stuff down inside,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I've
yeah,
met a lot of
and
CEOs who have gotten really good at that stuffing down. We're just going to keep
oh
going. I'm just
yeah,
going to push that down and keep going forward.
yeah, that's right. Because that's just the way a lot of people, the Type A personalities just want to
Yeah.
get over it and keep going, right?
Yeah.
But it adds up. What happens is these this negative energy coalesces and becomes denser, outside in your energy fields that Chinese refer to them as Wei Qi fields. And then they can eventually sink inside the body as well. And through emotions, especially if they're consistent and
Okay.
persistent, daily, weekly, monthly, it
Hmm.
amplifies that energy and creates more dense um, clusters, and
So
which
it's
it can
dense
eventually.
negative energy that as it builds, it magnifies. It's like becoming a black hole almost.
Right, yeah, yeah, and then
Huh.
it eventually can manifest into some sort of condition, disease,
Hmm.
element. The theory is that what the Chinese refer to Shen affects Qi and Qi affects Jing, meaning Shen, spirit, which you can
Okay.
consider, let's say that's our thoughts and emotions. And there's
Okay.
another aspect of that, but let's just say thoughts and emotions affects Qi, which is energy, the energetic matrix that's all around us and that makes up our energetic anatomy, right? And then Qi affects Jing, which Jing is physical matter. So the
Okay.
tissues of our body, right? So the spirit affects the energy affects physical matter, and vice versa. If someone's in a traumatic accident, for example, it can go the other direction as well.
Okay. Okay.
So Qigong helps work with all three bodies: the spirit body, energy body, and physical body, to purge, tonify, and regulate so we have a better state of health for our complete being, which is our
Mm.
spirit, energy, and physical body.
Mhm. I love this.
Yeah.
Craig, I mean, you and I are talking because for 26 plus years, you built a online digital agency, had tremendous success with that. Also, as you mentioned, a family, right? And so as the CEO, entrepreneur, you live this very multidimensional life where you're building a brand, you're meeting the demands of your clients and customers, you're having to reposition yourself, adapt to the shifts and changes in the market, like, all of that is so dynamic, and you have this physical body that needs sleep, that needs the
Yes.
nutrition, that needs the exercise, and, what's so cool about entrepreneurship is it's like the ultimate self-development program you could ever
It
join,
is.
because if you're ambitious and driven, you will push the limits, and you did, and you got this pre-diabetic diagnosis, and, it sent you on a journey to, like, really try and understand things, and this is what I love about entrepreneurship is it very quickly becomes a spiritual journey, and you
Yeah.
can't just put your head down and be in this battering ram to go conquer the world. You start to pay the price, and it's really cool to hear you break this down, spirit to energy to physical matter, and kind of cultivating energy. So cool, super
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. It's really cool. And you really start to feel it after a while once you start
Mhm.
working with the different exercises and meditation. You have certain physical manifestations of feeling energy, and everyone's different and unique. So some people
Okay.
might start feeling like a tingling in their sensation in their hands, or warmth, or coolness. And then there's
Mm,
all kinds of different things that come about as you become more sensitive and develop more perceptual awareness of those three bodies. So yeah, it's super cool
okay.
stuff. It's fascinating. I mean, I could go on for hours and
Yeah,
hours. But in my book, I do share what you're talking about, that entrepreneurial journey.
yeah.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Mhm.
It pushes you to your limit,
It
and
does.
it your mind, body, and spirit pushes you to your limit. And there's a model in my first chapter I developed based on actually five element theory that's comes from China, which
Okay.
perpetuates across martial and medical and food and music and spiritual systems. It's just all throughout the culture, five element theory. So I have five elements of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And like you said, how we get tested, and the elements are passion, which leads to discipline. Discipline leads to confidence. I mean, discipline leads to expertise. Expertise leads to confidence, and then confidence leads to faith. And when you're talking about
Mm,
getting tested, it's that faith element is where our warrior spirit kicks in and helps us overcome the most difficult challenges that we're faced with.
that's really, really cool. So, with these protocols for cultivating energy, you mentioned exercise, you mentioned meditation. I'm sure they're very specific ones to the Qi
Hmm.
Gong. Are there
Yes.
other types of protocols for cultivating energy?
Yeah. In Qigong, there's like a ton of different
Mm,
exercises. Um, some that are more centered on more of the health and wellness, like eight silk weaving is one, or eight pieces of brocade, it's sometimes called as well. And people can look that up online. But you got to be, when you look stuff up online, though, you don't get like the details, and you really
sure.
need to work with someone to get the details, like the specifics on how to breathe and move and postures so that you're doing it properly.
Wow.
Because there is, a bit of a risk, just like you go to a gym, if you don't know what you're doing and you're lifting weights, you can end up with an injury, right? So
Okay.
same thing with
This is
Qigong.
this is not
Yeah,
something
you
I should
can.
just YouTube, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you to like look and say, get a familiarity with it, and see what it's about, and like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this looks cool, it looks interesting, and then I would recommend finding someone
Okay.
to work with, at least to get you going, at least some basics,
Okay.
and just even with some simple exercises, like there were three exercises that I did in the first year and a half, and that's all I really focused on. And now there's
Yeah.
like a whole ton more
And,
I
like, how
know.
much how much time would it take to do these different exercises? About how much time in your day,
Sure.
morning?
So, with those I just referred to, the first one would take about 10 minutes. The second one would take about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes if I stretched it out. And
So
then I
good.
would end with a meditation. Yeah. And the meditation, I would go anywhere from 30 minutes up to 2 hours. Depends. Like on the weekends, I'd like really, go for it.
Okay.
But during the week, yeah, what I was doing running my company during the day, and
Mm.
then, family stuff in the evening and work. But then I would, like around 9 o'clock is when I'd go ahead and do my thing. And usually it'd be about an hour, maybe a little hour and a half max.
So
And
you
then
would
on the weekends, longer.
meditate an hour and a half before going to bed, like right before going to bed.
I would do those three exercises with the
Okay.
meditation, probably be about 30 minutes to 45 minutes or so.
Okay.
Today, I do it different. Today, I start my day earlier. Like when I got on the track of getting my health really in gear, I decided, you know what? The days and evenings are just too crazy. Even the evening gets, you're really tired
Sure.
and it's tough. So I just started getting up at like 4:20, and these days I get up at 5. But it's so important. I feel to get up early because that's
Mhm.
when before the world starts and everyone's hounding you, and
Yeah.
it's when you have time for yourself, and it's important to prioritize that self care. In my book, I have a saying: um, "You need to be of service to self, so you can be of service to others for a lifetime."
Mm,
If you're
I
not
love that.
of service to yourself, you burn out, and even if you have great intentions, you don't have the energy. That's what I found when I was passing out on the couch at like 8 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
I would never do that before. And my energy in the afternoon, it was just, I wasn't performing at my optimal level. Today, I feel like I did in my 20s, actually.
Wow.
And in order for you to not burn out, you really have to prioritize that self care. So again, you be of service to others for a lifetime.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes we need something like a diagnosis that's like, "Guess what? The
Yeah.
game you're playing is not working, and it's time to make some changes." I wanna hear some more about this energetic radiance. I feel like I experience people's radiance,
Okay.
and I would love to hear a more detailed
Sure.
description of what it is, how we can maybe cultivate that. Quick question for you. What would happen in your business and life if you could show up powerfully? As a coach to high performing entrepreneurs, I help intelligent people like you do just that. If you want to be inspired by people who are getting more done in 90 days than most people do all year, I'm going to invite you to go check out my case studies. The website is now.katierichardson.com/case study. And the cool thing is, we've got so many case studies there. You can find an entrepreneur who's just like you. I've also got a link for you down in the show notes. Okay, back to the show.
Sure. Okay. So let's talk a bit about the energetic anatomy. Okay.
Okay.
So, and everyone has this ability. I'm not special, and everyone has this ability, and everyone actually has certain degrees of perceptual awareness. So, like if you walk into a room, right, and people have been fighting in that room, like arguing, right, and you
Mm-hmm.
walk in, you kind of notice, like, wow, it's heavy in here. It's like
Mm-hmm.
thick and heavy and weird, right? It's just something that a lot of people, you've probably experienced it. And like you said, you kind of have a feeling about people, right? So that's all real, and it's a aspect of perceptual awareness. So our energetic anatomy, the way, from my understanding, we have our eternal soul, which is sitting right here in the heart center, and you can imagine that as this radiant ball of light, in a sense. And that's where we really want to develop that radiance, our
Mm-hmm.
eternal soul. And that sits right in the middle of what's called the Taiji pole. It's a column of light that goes from the base of our perineum up to the top of our head. So that's a column of light. And that's also something else that we can, as we do this work and cultivate, it helps build the capacity and radius. Kind of like when you're working out and you have muscles, but there's potential for those muscles to get bigger and stronger. And as you work them, they get bigger and stronger. So same type of thing. We also have what the Chinese refer to as three dantians, lower, mid, and upper. And these are energetic containers. And then the chakras from Far East India system, the chakras sit within those. Um, and those three dantians have 9 chambers in them. Again, technical here.
Yeah.
And those dantians and 9 chambers, they are all responsible for different perceptual awareness, like empathy, kinesthetic perceptions, intuitive perceptions. So as you're working, um, doing cultivation work, you are working with this energetic anatomy and building, getting them stronger, getting more radiance, more light in there, especially when you're purging, you're creating space, getting all the negative
Mm,
energy out, and you create space, and then you fill it with light. That's tonifying and strengthening, and you become more radiant. There's so many times where I would be done with my practice, and then I'd go inside, and my wife would see me like, "Wow, you're like 10 years younger." Like, this
mm.
is weird, or I would go somewhere else and they're like, wow, Craig, you have like this interesting glow about you today. And I just like smile to myself because I know what's up. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
because
that's so cool.
it's funny, people notice it, they don't really
Yeah.
understand what it is or why, but
Mm-mm.
it's from the work. And when I work on people, when I'm doing the energy work on people, I see it when I'm done with them, and like when compared to when they first walk in and when they're walking out, they look like completely different. Yeah, it's really quite amazing. We also have these our energy body or spirit body that's there are like casings inside, and then outside of our body we have these different. Some people refer to them as auric fields. Chinese say Wei Qi
Mm,
fields, and there's different groupings and numbers. But we have one first Wei Qi fields like sits like an inch off our body. The second one sits like a foot to a foot and a half off our body. Then the third, extends out 6 or 8 feet, but depending upon our state of health and spiritual development and all that stuff. And the more expansive our fields are, the healthier we are,
okay.
our entire being. And I do something when people come to see me. I utilize these copper rods, and it's a way to measure where the field is at when they cross is where that meets the field. And every single time, 100% of the time over the 825 sessions that I've done, when they come in, I measure it, it's at a certain distance. And then when they leave and I measure it, it's always expanded because of the
Um,
energy work. It's just real and it works. And even our state of mind, I do a little experiment with people that come in that are new to see me. I have them think negative thoughts. I have them be neutral. I have them think negative thoughts. I have them think positive thoughts in different stages. And I measure each. And whenever they go to the negative, the field contracts. Whenever they
um,
go to the positive, the field expands. So it's just a way to demonstrate that our thoughts affect our reality. Just like I said, the Shen, the spirit, thoughts and emotions affects the Qi,
mhm.
the energy affects physical matter. And you see it through this little exercise that I do with people. It's real 100%.
It's so cool to hear you describe all of this because I think we've all experienced in some form that our thoughts impact our reality. But to hear you describe
Mhm.
about these fields and how we impact
Yeah.
that, like it starts to feel more tangible and real. And
Yes.
I'm really curious, since you have been guiding people through some of these processes, I'm curious what kinds of results or outcomes do people see as they start to develop this influence over their energy and their energy field? And then, therefore, kind of impacting their external reality. What kinds of results do people start to see?
Yeah. So the way I like to organize it is in 3 buckets. I like threes also. So, I like to classify the work as healing, self-transformation, and optimization.
Mm,
Optimization meaning just like energetic optimization, kind of like maintaining. So, someone could come in, um, a and go through that continuum, in a linear fashion, but the way life is always throwing sucker punches at us, curveballs, all that stuff, right? We could be bouncing around any of those buckets and needing attention in any of those
mhm,
3 areas at any time. So
mhm.
some people, they come to me where it's like a tune-up, and
Okay.
they might come in once every 3 months, 6 months, once a year, just kind of depends. Everyone's different, and with their life situation too. And that's just like your car needs maintenance and you take it in for a tune up, same thing. It's better just from an energetic standpoint. Um, transformational work where you're really, like I said, the cultivation, building that radiance. It's a consciousness. You're expanding your consciousness, your conscious awareness for really self transformation. Really working on your mindset and and yeah, just your expansion and what you're capable of. Just your whole mindset shifts. So that's another aspect. And the healing work is where there's people that have whatever issues going on. Like the most common thing that people have that come in is anxiety. I work with a lot of professional people too. So all of these stresses and pressures, a lot of people have anxiety, and anxiety resides in the heart center.
Okay.
And different things lead to anxiety. It could be fear, some sort of fear that is leading up to anxiety. It can just be excessive nervousness, obsessive nervousness that ends up becoming anxiety. There's a number of different emotions, and these emotions are tied to our different organs in our systems. So just like anxiety is in the heart, fear is in the kidneys, that obsessiveness and worriness is in the spleen, or someone might be very angry and resentful and, go into rage a lot. That's liver, so there's different ways to work with people on that. And when people, the outcomes, people feel, especially a lot of people for whatever reason come see me with more than mental, emotional stuff, probably because that was my experience to begin with.
Okay.
The divine kind of just brings to you who you're supposed to see. And I have a bunch of testimonials on my website. I have two websites about how people just feel so much better, more focused. People that have trouble sleeping, they get great night of sleep, the best night of sleep that they've had in forever.
Wow.
It's different for everybody, and people get back to me, and it's very positive. I have all kinds of testimonials on my site, and on my business website, I do have a section for energetic practices, and I have a nice video testimonial from a CEO of a tech company where essentially he said it changed his life. Um, that's some things that um,
Yeah.
compliments I've received as well
Craig,
from time to
that's super fulfilling stuff. And I think it's
time. It is.
interesting, we get into entrepreneurship because we kind of want to, I don't know, become
Mhm.
somebody in the world, and we're really passionate and driven to do something significant. And it's really
Mhm.
cool to watch you kind of take the skill sets that you developed in your digital creative agency and like really expanding into this work of energy work and Qigong and helping support CEOs, founders, owners, creators. We shoulder a lot of responsibility.
Oh, yes.
And it's it's like it can be too much at times. And, especially when you're talking about anxiety, I know
Mhm.
so many people who experience that in a very like chronic, consistent basis. And you talked
Yes.
about how we can kind of build up on those things, and you talked about purging. Can you
Mhm.
give us maybe get like as tactical as you can with the purging? I'm really curious about this. I've heard other people talk about kind of similar concepts. What are some go-to ways that you practice or that you share with other people to help them purge some of these negative feelings and emotions that really bog us down?
Sure. So, I normally, when people come to see me, I'll give them what are called Qigong prescriptions. So
I
rather
love
like
it.
a doctor's office gives you a
Yeah.
pill, I give you some homework, some exercises. They're Qigong prescriptions, and they're to address certain things. So, um, and again, these things are normally you should work with someone, but I can give you, an idea, right, of one in
Okay.
particular. Um, so one, it's very super simple. It's called pulling down the heavens, and it can be done seated, but normally I have people stand, and when they stand, you slightly bend your knees, you tuck your hips in, so like you're going to go sit in a chair, so your back is straight. But again, it can be done sitting as well, and it's really simple where your hand movements just come up, and then you have your palms facing down as they come
Okay.
up, and once they hit like that shoulders height, then your palms turn over, and you're inhaling at this point, and you take your hands towards the center and belly down the elbows. And you don't want to raise up and shrug your shoulders because then you're tense. You're not
Okay.
relaxed, right? So you
Okay.
want to stay relaxed. You're inhaling, And then you just bring your hand slowly down the center and you're exhaling at this point. But now where the purging comes in, you actually incorporate a sound. And there's also visualization, which is the tonifying aspect, and the two together, the sound and the visualization of light, has a regulating, which means balancing effect. So the sound is what's called the descending ha sound. The ha sound works with the heart center. So this is a great exercise to um, help alleviate any sort of stress or anxiety that one may be experiencing. And then this it's so simple, this one, but it actually has a bunch of applications. It's also you do it like 3 times, and it's working with the three bodies as well: the physical body, the energy
Okay.
body, and the spirit body. But the visualization is bringing up what's called golden earth chi. So all this gold light coming up from the earth into the center of your palms, right, and filling your body. And then you turn your hands over, uh, heavenly white chi. So all this divine white light coming down from, the heavens being thought of as like the sun, moon, and stars, right?
Hmm.
Coming down and filling up, just kind of like raining down on your body, and then going all the way from the top of your head down to the bottom of your feet, going all the way through you. And then the descending ha sound is on the exhale. So it will look and sound like this. So inhale, golden earth chi, palms over. Keep inhaling, heavenly white chi, and then the exhale. Ah. So you see the pitch, the tone
Hmm.
descends. And
Hmm.
as it descends, it's vibrating, and you'll get to a point where it really vibrates the heart center.
Okay.
And everyone's body is different. So the pitch is going to be different where it has the biggest resonance. And that vibration is what breaks up that negative energetic
Mm.
clusters. And then with that light, you're filling that empty space that's been created
Mm.
to tonify, to strengthen, and then there's the
That's super
balancing because
cool.
we all yeah, it's super cool. It really is. And that's just one
Really cool.
really super simple one. Someone could do that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes,
Hmm.
15 minutes, um, a day, or even if they just got out of something and they just do it 3 times real quick to like settle their nerves, or they're going
Hmm.
into a situation,
Okay.
3 times just to kind of settle down. And it's highly effective. Yeah, it's really good. And that's just one of there's so many. It's
Yeah.
just
I bet.
this is a never ending thing. My doctorate program, I'll be finished in August. Um, but at this point, I've realized, and I'm totally cool with it because I'm so fascinated with it. It's a lifelong study. There's no
Mhm.
end. Like,
I love that though. Like recently, I'm kind of picking up some skills that I developed as a younger girl, and I'm like doing handstands again. And I played the piano last night, and I
oh, awesome.
was talking to a friend who he exited his company about 18 months ago, and he's like getting really serious about golf. And I think
Mm,
this is what life's about. It's just this
yes.
continual search of learning and growth and development and developing ourselves, expanding and challenging ourselves in a really beneficial way. And that's really cool. Like I've never considered, developing myself in this field of energy. And I think that's really fascinating. You've really
Mm,
enlightened my mind. It's interesting as you described some of those things. I have a lot of practices that I've just kind of developed on my own. My background is Christianity. And so, I have spiritual practices, but I don't have any of these kind of energy practices. But over the years, as I've journaled and kind of
mm,
noticed what's going on within me, I started to develop these visuals. And it was really fascinating to hear you
mm.
talk about this light center and this beam of
Yes.
light and I'm like, "Oh, I've seen that." Like,
Yes.
I I felt that. And like,
Yes.
nobody taught it to me, but, like, it's really helped me, and it's kind of something that I just stumbled upon through my own best efforts to feel grounded and centered, and so it's really cool to just kind of see all of these variables, something that is just a feeling makes it hard to be actionable. because we
Mhm.
create through words and language. And so what you've shared today, like it's really exciting for me because you've brought definition, you've
Mm.
given words and language to a lot of things that have just been a feeling for me in my life. And so it's kind of exciting what becomes possible when it's more tangible, actionable.
That's
Super
so
cool.
cool. You know what's great about what you just described is that you have experienced, you know, what you described is you've gone through an experience, a spiritual experience, and someone can learn about it like book knowledge, the theory,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you won't understand it until you experience it.
Mm.
And that's why my first teacher taught me. It was like, I'm going to hold back on the theory. You just need to experience this stuff. And so it's all about feeling and experience. And then as I started learning the theory, I was like, oh, okay, I understand what's going on here. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. And then with the doctorate program, I was really able to accelerate very fast in it because I was like, oh, yeah, I know what they're talking about here. Oh, yeah, I know what they're talking about. So what
Mm.
you just described is awesome. And like you just said, I brought definition to because I just brought some theory in, but you've experienced it. So
Uh-huh.
now you have this great understanding of what's
Hmm.
going on. And yeah, I have come from a Christian background as well. And the teacher, the guy that runs the doctorate program, he very interesting background because he has a born again Christian background, but then as he's been at it for 50 years, he's retiring soon actually. But through his studies and working with different masters, he studied Taoism, Buddhism, and he teaches those tracks. And he also has a Christian mysticism track.
Mm.
And what he stated that a lot of these different systems that are throughout the world, they all have very similar methods to achieve the same result. And it's just the belief system, the belief structures that
Yeah.
are different. It has its variances on the outside, but as you get closer to the
Mm.
center, to the source and divine God, however you want to label it, um, the methods become more similar and similar. There's less of a difference as you approach the center. So what you just described, that's just a great testament to how that rings true
Mm.
because you heard what I described and you're like, oh yeah, I've experienced that.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And that's a great way to describe it. It is an experience. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's an experience, and
Awesome.
you can't really understand it until you experience it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Craig. This has been a really unexpected and very fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you being
Right, you
so
probably don't
open.
yeah. Oh, of course. I love sharing this stuff, yeah, and then
Yeah.
another thing I like to add too is, um, from my background, and that's why I'm really excited to just share, I have all my business experience from 26 years of running a successful digital agency,
Mhm.
having an exit and all that great stuff. Um, and then all these practices. And it's not like I'm someone that's like meditating in a cave out in the wilderness. And then I'm coming in like, oh yeah, everything's butterflies and rainbows. And you should just be like
Yeah.
this, because I have no problems. Like, no, that's not the world we live in.
Mhm.
It's a much more grounded, practical approach. Like these are tools that helped me. And that's just what I want to be able to share. It doesn't have to be like super woo woo or anything like that. It's like, no, this is just practical stuff that as we're in the world, living our lives, going through the things that we have to go through, there's ways to um, just transform yourself and just maintain a sense of balance.
Yeah. Being a human being, it's a fascinating journey. And I
It
love
sure
that you
is.
have, experienced in these multiple different modalities to help and support us in this journey. The book is called Business Kung Fu. Where else can
Yes.
we find you, Craig?
Business Kung Fu. So the book is available on Amazon.
Nice.
Hopefully later on, I'm down the road. It'll be in other channels, but for now, Amazon and hardcover, paperback, Kindle format. I have two websites. My main business website is csquaredpro.io. So that's the letter C, then squared spelled out pro.io, csquaredpro.io. And then my energy medicine website is c2energymedicine.com. So that's the letter C, then the number two, energymedicine.com. People can find me on LinkedIn, really simple, Craig Cook. So LinkedIn/in/Craig Cook, Twitter, Craig Cook, Instagram, Craig Cook, TikTok, C Squared. dot 777. Yeah, 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 yeah. So pretty
All
easy to
right.
find me, but the best ways to get a hold of me is through my website, filling out the form, or
Okay.
on LinkedIn, messaging me on LinkedIn, because I monitor both those closely.
That's great. I appreciate that. And we'll have links for everybody in the show notes to all of those. Reach out to Craig, tell him what you experienced in this episode, get the book,
Yeah,
Business Kung Fu. You know, if you have been experiencing anxiety, difficulty, resentment, anger, hate, rage, any of
yeah,
those
all
feelings,
that
which
stuff.
if you're an entrepreneur, you're experiencing those things.
Oh yeah,
And you know, Craig's got a really cool process, practices, method to help you benefit from those things. And it sounds like, you know, you take those things and you kind of flip them on their head and all of a sudden you're creating beautiful things in your life. And thank you, Craig. This has been absolutely incredible.
no, thank you, Katie. I'm just happy to share, and thank you for being so inquisitive and curious about it. It's super cool.
Thanks. Well, for everybody who's listening, this is What's Working Now. Thanks for listening to the What's Working Now podcast. If you found today's episode to be interesting, be sure to share this with a friend. And if you are looking to level up your organization as a CEO, I'm going to invite you to join the Now newsletter. This is a weekly newsletter. I send it out on Fridays. I tell personal stories, talk about what it's like to build a significant business while raising a family, homeschooling kids. And I even share case studies, very timely, relevant situations where I go into detail how I am helping entrepreneurs navigate, lead, and build incredible organizations. You can get all of that behind the scenes information and more inside the Now newsletter. I've got a link to it right now in the show notes, and I will see you in the next episode.